all synthetic.
Well, a lot of those do put pollen in it, as well as other supplements. So
Oh.
that's
global patties.
What do you buy in pollen?
Well,
What's the brand name?
Ultra B.
You buy the Ultra B.
Yeah, I mean, we have a relationship with Man Lake, so I mean, that's where we buy most of our stuff.
How do you apply that stuff? How do you feed it?
Dump it on the back of that truck.
Just dump? Just dump?
Yeah, on a sunny day, I dump it on the back of the truck, and then I just drink beer and watch them do their thing. It's pretty fun. But if the weather's going to be poor, obviously you're wasting your money. You can do what you see a lot of the guys, with the using PVC pipe, and you can put it out there where it's tilted down so that you don't get any moisture in it, and that way if you don't waste your money if you sprinkle or the dew in the morning will destroy it. If you know they're going to take it all on the same day, just dump it out on a tray or put it out in front of the hives and they'll hammer it. Don't waste your money and put it in the middle of the season when there's tons of other floral sources. We only use this first thing in the spring and then right at the end of fall. That's the only time I use it. I don't use it in the middle of the season at all.
For smaller scale distribution, poultry feeders
Yep.
work well.
Yep. All right, so the quilt boxes that we started using years and years and years and years ago. This is the setup that we had. So you've got a 3/4 inch shim that goes on right on top of your frames. The picture on the right is the actual quilt box. That's metal screen underneath. You can't use the fiberglass stuff because the bees will chew right through it. And then staple that. You put a little shim across. It's not shown in here, but there's a little wooden shim that goes across that you just staple that screen up to, just so that screen doesn't sag down on top of the bees. The 3/4 inch shim is nice because now you can go and you can put sugar patties or dry sugar on top of it. You can even make that shim bigger if you want to give yourself more room. You can make that an inch and a half to give yourself more room to feed the bees below it. But that's what we're doing forever. So this goes on top of here. You fill the box up with about halfway with just your regular Tractor Supply pine shavings. I toyed with cedar too just to see if it would make the bees fly, scoot and not like it, but they don't care about it. Either one's fine. They're not going up there anyway. Box on top of your inner cover on top of that, and there's your wintering box. Now, that's the way I would do things if I had, say, 0 to 50 hives or whatever it might be. I've changed this a little bit where I now don't use the screen. I take that screen out, and where you see the shavings, I'm not using shavings anymore. There's no screen in the bottom. Instead of having a 3/4 inch shim, I just dado the box right there, and then I put newspaper in the back half of that hive. So I've got newspaper right on top of the frames, the back half of it, and then I put dry sugar on top of that. So that's just the emergency feed should the bees run out of what they have the resources in there. They can come up and hit that. That's just for me, it's just time management again. I'm just doing it. If I didn't have that many hives, I would stick to this method right here. This weeps all the moisture out of that hive. You don't have any issues with it. This stuff will be soaked. Like that goes by the end of the season in the spring when you get back in there. It's soaked. The bees will be dry as a bone. And just for those of you, I'm sure most people in here have heard this, but if you think about when the bees are feeding, you get all that condensation that pours up on top of it, and you hear some people say it doesn't drip down on them. I say BS, it does. It drops down. So if it's 32 degrees outside, it's not too bad, but if I blast you with a hose, you're dead. So you get hit with those. Think about every single one of those drops that's coming down on top of those bees. You're snipering bees off. So your cluster goes from X numbers to whatever. So if you have 100 droplets in a day, you're losing significant numbers each day. This will eliminate that. Still retains moisture in the hive by holding that, but it allows it. With me, I'm planning on the dry sugar in the hive absorbing that moisture, so that instead of the wood chips. So I just eliminated that. Yep.
Do you have upper ventilation, or is that cover on tight?
No, upper ventilation. Those are all telescoping lids.
Well, yeah, but if you don't shim them somehow, they'll set.
No, well, my upper ventilation is in that shim right there. So if you're looking at the shim that's on this one, that is my upper ventilation. There's no upper ventilation above those wood chips, if that's what you're asking. That's the only upper ventilation. So you still keep that heat up on top of the hive. Aaron.
Man Lake is marketing that piece that you don't have to do all the special manipulation, just by the little inner cover with the deeper sidewalls on it.
Okay, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but
It's the only thing I buy anymore.
yeah. Yeah, I can just, if you got, I mean, it's so cheap. I mean, literally that's a so you take a 2x4, cut it to 3 inches, run it on a table saw down the middle, and then just cut them to length and, staple them. There's no money involved in this. So some of the things, if you got a little bit of woodworking skills, you can just do it really, really cheap that they charge you an arm and a leg for. I try to make everything but the boxes themselves because I can get them, so cheap from it's not worth my time. The other configuration, the other major configuration that we run in our operation is something I'm sure I won't spend a ton of time. I'm sure you've seen other iterations of this, but we've been running this for years, and it's just we run 4x4s. So you just got 200s. I run both of mine in the front because I'm running 4 on a pallet. You'll see some people that are running one in the front, one in the back. I don't think it really makes any difference. We run them just fine like this, and then we can face everybody the same direction. Run a piece of plywood in the center just to separate them, and then you're just running your 4x4s on top of that. I would try this for those of you that you got high losses or you want to try to just have something to get yourself through the winter for next year. Even if you want to take a little bit of resource off, do some walkaway splits. Do something like this and just throw a walkaway split in some of these, or do a split from your hives and buy a queen. Save yourself a little bit of money and do some of these, and you'd be amazed. Even if only one of them out of the 2 makes it through the winter, now if you have a dead out in one of your hives, you just replace it and you keep going. Obviously, everybody knows Michael Palmer and Kirk Webster, who have been doing things like this forever, and there's a reason why they do it, so you can backfill some of your losses that you're going to have.
They're marketed, they call them double nukes. So if you're looking for, I've run them 3 high.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them right now in the winter that are 3 high.
Yeah.
I've got.
You're doing all wood all the time?
What was that?
No BMAX, all wood?
All wood.
Is there an advantage to you, do you think, to that? Just what you like, personal thing.
That's what I use. That's what I have. So that's what I use. Yeah, and I'll run them like this. And I've got pictures, but I don't have. I also just run singles like this. So you've got I run 4x4 is just single, like a 4x4 box. So I've got my nukes are 4-frame wooden nukes, and I'll just put one of these 4-frame boxes on it, and I winter them just like that, not side by side. I've also got 5-frame nukes that are sitting out there. I fit the box to how many bees you have. If I'm getting later in winter and I see a hive that's in a 10-frame box, but it's not going to winter well in a 10-frame box, move them into a different box. Give them a different house that fits the size of the bees. So maybe you move them into a 5-frame, maybe you move them into a 4x4, eliminating 2 of the frames. A smaller cluster of bees will do much better moving in 4x4 than a 10-frame box moving side to side, trying to heat that and move. It's just very simple for them to move up and down. They're in contact with more hives, and it's easier for them to get food. So move them into that box. A smaller cluster will just do much better than that than a 10. You hear all the time, don't open your hives in the winter. You're going to break the propolis seal. BS. That's not true. I open them all the time. It doesn't matter. 20 degrees outside, you can still open them and get inside of them. It doesn't hurt them one bit. I don't have any trouble with them. The other side of it is, if you're not sure if they have any food, you're better off opening them up and checking to see if there's sugar, or if you need to put sugar on them, or if they're light, what do you need to do? Better off opening them up and checking on them than letting them die. But I personally, again, my opinion, don't take it, think about what you want to do and use it, but we open ours all winter long and take a look and see where they stand. Even more so now that I'm in single 10-frame boxes. If you're running 2 deeps and you know that they've got 2 deeps of honey, probably don't need to open them up as much because you know that food is probably not going to be an issue for them, but you never know. That's me with, again, 10 years ago with stethoscope listening in there for bees. Now I just either open them up, or we've also got thermal imaging that we look at the hives so they determine whether they're biobeing or not. And this brings us into treatment schedule. This is the other part of it that is just so important. This is the part out of my bee yard. This is what has crushed me in it. When I said that I've got 5 to 12% losses, that's if I stick to this right here. If I don't stick to this and I get busy with something or I miss some of these, this is when I get my losses. I get absolutely killed.
Could you read that?
Yeah.
Those lines?
Yeah. Sorry. This is in a perfect world. So we're saying late April into May, we're gonna do it's gonna be 2 to 3 weeks of consecutive oxalic acid or thiamine treatments. What you guys use is up to you on how you do it. And then the end of May into June, another 2 to 3 weeks of oxalic acid. Again, that's perfect world. Do you get that many? Very rarely do I get to all of these or as many weeks as I'm putting on the list. The reason I do that May into June is because we're selling nukes. I wouldn't necessarily be as worried about that May into June, but that's just my extra assurance that I'm sending these out as clean as possible, so that I've got as low a mite load as possible when I'm sending these out. So I do that treatment. You may not see other beekeepers doing that one again, but just being extra cautious. That mid-July treatment, that's really, if you don't treat in that window, that's really when you've seen Randy Oliver's curve of showing the bee populations versus mite load. We've all seen that, and that's why this one is so critical, because everything's maxing out at that point. So if you were to miss that mite load at that point, you're not going to catch back up. You're going to start getting those viruses in the hive, and maybe in the past we saw that we could get away with some viruses, but it just seems like the viruses are just causing so much more havoc on the bees that making sure that we're as close to zero as possible is really important. And treating in that window is extremely important. Yes.
Could you, so 2 to 3 consecutive weeks, you mean each week you hit them?
If you're using formic acid, yeah, or I'm sorry, if you're using oxalic acid, yeah. I mean, so if you look at some of the thymol treatments, those are longer duration treatments anyway.
So oxalic acid and thymol at the same time?
I'm sorry, it's one. I should have said that's going to be one or the other.
One or the other.
On either of those, whichever you're. I'm not going to say which one is better or which one to use. But if you're using oxalic acid, that's going to have to be you got every week go out. But if you've only got a few hives, and regardless, I mean, it's going to take you longer to put your gear on than it is to go and fog a few hives with oxalic acid.
Can you, one week hit them with oxalic, the next week hit them with thymol? Or are you consistent?
You'd probably be consistent because the thymol treatments are going to tend to be a longer duration treatment. So you wouldn't want to be doing oxalic acid and thymol at the same time.
Dribble or vaporize oxalic acid?
It'd be vaporization.
You vaporize.
How long after you treat do you take the honey?
After you treat, well, you can't treat with oxalic acid or thymol while there's honey on those. So you're going to have to do that prior to any honey supers going on. So if you're going to be using those treatments, that's why when I'm saying that mid-July, formic acid is approved for use with honey supers on. So that's why formic acid would be used in mid-July. So you're not worried about who's got honey, who doesn't.
Thank you.
Are you worried about oxalic acid harming the brood in the early spring?
No. I've got beekeeper friends who treat, I mean, 3 days, every 3 days. Some of them are hitting the bees and they see zero issue with oxalic acid on them. I don't see any negative side effects of using oxalic acid. The negative part of oxalic acid is you're not getting anything under the cappings. So if you treat today and you feel good about it, what if those bees go in and rob out a hive that is loaded with varroa mites? The next day they come back, there's no residuals in that hive that are going to kill those varroa mites. So you now have a hive that you thought was completely clean that now just brought a bunch of mites in, and you could potentially have a big problem. So it's the short duration of treatment with oxalic acid. You've got that one little brief moment in time that you're treating, as opposed to some of the other treatments out there.
So in this scenario, you're not putting any supers on
remember, I'm splitting my hives because I'm making up nukes, I'm doing my splits, I'm getting, no, not yet, no, but my bees are gonna put on from the time, like say I stop at the end of May, from the end of May until the 3 weeks in June, I can load up, a couple of mediums or, in no time at all. They're just hammering honey. So I still are gonna have an abundance of honey even using this method right here. So I'm
Short honey season and a long bee production season. That's how you're laying out your year.
well, long bee production season.
Well, that's all you're working on from late April into June, is growing your hives.
Well, so I'm the end of May and end of May. So I'm at end of May. But when my nukes are out, that's when I transition everything into honey production at that point. And it doesn't mean that some of my yards aren't going into honey production sooner than that. This is going to be most of my yards that are going to be nukes at that point. But some of them are being pushed into honey production. Just if I can't get to them in time, and I don't have time to get there and split, then those are going to go into honey production. Yes,
So
ma'am.
you don't do any fall honey?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
But you're treating without shallot in September.
After I pull my honey off.
So your consecutive treatments are to cover a brood cycle.
Yep.
To get phoretic mites and then the ones that hatch out. And then using both oxalic and thymol is to maybe minimize mites developing resistance to one or the other?
Yeah, I like to split it up, but I also like to use formic in the not only because I'm gonna have honey supers on, so I'm gonna have to use formic acid in the middle of the season, but also because there is the potential that you could harm brood or kill your queen when you're using formic acid. So if I'm gonna have any of that happening, I want to give the hive an opportunity to rebound, requeen themselves, and still have time to establish before we're going into that season. So I am not. I see people doing formic acid treatments at the end of the season, and for me, I think it's just too high a risk to be using formic acid late in the season. Now, so did I answer your question about the fall honey and how we're able?
Yeah, we just take it later than that, for fall honey, but
Okay.
we also don't live at
Yeah, well, we also have to think that I'm also trying to refill that brood nest is probably close to empty. So no, we still have a honey flow going on, but I want that brood nest to be backfilled. Otherwise, I'm lugging syrup after syrup after syrup out there, trying to get these up to weight, and some of them aren't getting up to weight, so it's a pain. So I'm trying to get them to pull that back in so that they're backfilling the brood nest. And here we go. This is when I stop making friends right here. Some of you are not going to like me after we go through this one, but it is what it is. So there's a huge push on the internet right now with treatment-free beekeeping, and I struggle with it. Just because I've seen some of the issues that come with it, and you think about, with livestock today, we're not doing this Darwinism thing with other livestock out there. I don't know why the honeybees have been pushed into this little niche group where we want to let them go and establish themselves on their own, and whoever makes it, and whoever doesn't dies. It doesn't work well. The other issue with this is, if you are in an area with a bunch of other beekeepers and you decide you're going to try this out, well, what are you doing to your neighbors that are out there trying to treat? We talked about the scenario with oxalic acid where you go and somebody treats the bees, and then you got this guy down the road who has this mite bomb of bees sitting there blowing mites out like crazy, and then you're destroying people's hives that are around you because your hives are in the proximity of them. Or your hives die from mite load, and then they get robbed out by somebody else's bees, and they get loaded up with mites. So it's that whole community thing where you have to really think about what are you doing. And if you're in a remote area where nobody else is around, go for it. Maybe that would work. And because a lot of us all sit and we just watch every YouTube video on bees that comes out, we watch these and you hear these guys that are on there. And the people on YouTube, a lot of them don't even have enough bees, they haven't done enough with them. Does their opinion that you're looking at, when you're listening to these people, does it really make sense? Is it something that you want to take as gospel? When you've got somebody that only has a handful of hives, yet they're doing speeches all around, they're getting pulled in. You know, like, let's just say like some guy that has a podcast on treatment-free beekeeping, and he's on there talking about bees, only kept bees in one location of the country, and is going to tell you about why you should be treatment-free and what it should be. I would just take a step back and really look at what that means. And I'd also take a look at the individuals. This one, just don't worry, just relax, it's going to be fine. Okay. If you want to rip a bong hit and sit back and think it's going to be fine and everything's going to be good, no, they're not. Your bees are going to die. Your bees are going to die when you follow some of what these people do. They want you to go and just put these bees in a box and forget about them. It's not effective. In my approach, there's one guy that's out there I think that has been very successful, Kirk Webster. Kirk is somebody that's been doing it for a long time and been successful doing it. And he's probably the only guy that I would respect in that realm of things that's really doing it on that scale. He's doing it on a large scale. Everybody else that you see that's doing treatment-free beekeeping is on a small scale or won't tell you what their losses are. So you're going to see these major losses in bees, but they're not going to tell you. The guys that are out there treating, they're willing to say, hey, this is what my losses were, and we'll cop to it based on what we did that year. This is something I get all the time from some of my newbies. They say, my bees look great, I didn't treat, thank you so much. So we'll put your order in now. There you go. Ready for a nuke for next year? Because if you didn't treat, we've all seen it. Most of us that have been keeping bees for a long duration of time, you've got this big, robust hive, looks fantastic. You're patting yourself on the back. Better than a doornail when you go in, in the spring. And it just crushes you because you felt so good about what you did. And that's where a lot of these are. I had it happen. And that's where, we'll talk about the last one. So you're seeing a lot of things that you're hearing from academia and bee presentations about swarming right now. If your bees swarm, you've got a high likelihood of them making it through just based on breaking up the brood cycle, right? So they break up that brood cycle because they're swarming. So let them swarm. Well, okay, well, if we're trying to produce honey, we're trying to do things, is that really the way we want to do things? The other side of it is, I don't think they're taking into account everybody's individual location, how you keep bees. If you keep bees like I do, where you've got 4 hives on a pallet, then yes, when that hive swarms, yeah, so they've got a brood break. But you've got 3 other hives that are sitting on a pallet next to them. So you've got drifting from other bees. You've got mites that can be crawling from one hive to the other. If you were to have one hive isolated in the middle of nowhere by itself and let it swarm, would those statistics be right? Okay, maybe that's right. But it doesn't work to the way a lot of us keep bees. And it may for you guys, but for me, with the number of hives that we have, this doesn't work. Some of the other ones you'll see out there, there's a beekeeper that is touting treatment-free beekeeping, but really just pumps out lots of queens. Pumps out tons of queens all over, but touts treatment-free. Well, of course. You got a brood break. You got brood break after brood break after brood break that is allowing for you to be treatment-free. I don't care whether you take Russians, Italians, Cardinal, take any bee you want. If you're breaking them up that much, that's fine. But again, you guys raising queens, or you're raising bees in your backyard where you're trying to produce a little bit of honey and have your bees in the backyard? Make sure when you look at the individual that's talking about it, how are they keeping your bees, and does it apply to the way you guys are doing things? I mean, it's really important for the way you want to do things. And that's the end of my presentation, and this is our contact info. So we're in Homer, New York, again, sitting at a really high elevation. We've been doing this for around a decade. We've got some fantastic genetics. Really proud of what we've done, and we're trying to make sure that we're staying as small as we need to until we find a way that we can produce this on a larger scale. Our limiting factor in the past